Um, I swallowed my pride. I channeled my inner Logan, and I went out and spoke to Mike Norvell. Obviously, Florida State started their camps. They are traveling through the entire state, and they started in the best place you can start, South Florida, with 4 camps over a 3-day period in Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade County. And we spoke to him, only stationed in South Florida, to get a chance to get a one-on-one with the leader, the best 3-6 football coach in all of college football, Mike Norvell. And I will say, all kidding, all joking aside, it's a very nice guy, very pleasant, very easy to talk to. Was very honest about things. We talked to him about coming back to South Florida or getting the recruits, and he was very adamant that Florida State needs to recruit South Florida again. You know, he said this is a great place, great history Florida State has here in South Florida, and he talked about the camp, about giving them an opportunity. You know, he was impressed with a lot of the kids down there, obviously second graders through 8th graders. He was very impressed with the talent that came out there, about 50 at the camp at Tropical Park alone. So he came out there, and we asked him point blank, you know, how do you sell the Florida State program after a 3-6 season? And the comment he made was very good. He talked about all the investment that's gone in the 2020-2021 season. We can't stop now. We have to continue to build. We have to continue to push. You have to focus on improving 1% every single day. And that's one of the things he talked about with the kids, was he said, you have to improve every single day. And he was very adamant about the fact that we can't look back. Because I asked him, what was your message after the Duke game, after a 3-6 season? It's Florida State's worst record since 1975. And he talked about the fact that you have to look forward. You can't keep looking back. And it's something we've talked about. Florida State, you know, we have to know for a fact that the chances are slim that right now this Florida State team has the talent right now to beat Notre Dame. But you have to improve every single day. And who knows? Florida State could come out and beat Notre Dame at that point. And we also talked about that upcoming season. You know, you've mentioned it before, Mark. This is a schedule that is going to be arguably one of the toughest schedules in all of college football. And he said, you have to sell and trust. And you talked about trust the process. The question is going to be what happens on Notre Dame game. If Florida State is not as competitive as we hope against Notre Dame, is that process going to be trusted, or is this going to be a team that's going to lose momentum right away and all hell breaks loose? I think that's our biggest question right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Logan. I mean, I honestly
did he sell you?
I'm willing to give him a chance. I'm willing to put aside the fact that he torpedoed our program worse than Willie Taggart ever could, worse than Jimbo Fisher ever did before Jimbo Fisher bailed on us. I'm willing to give him one more chance, but I need to see. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 6-1 record, but I need to see some progress. I don't mind us losing. I mind us looking bad in the process.
When you say torpedo the program, do you mean just on the field that it was the worst performance you've seen on the field? But because it doesn't seem like otherwise he's torpedoing the program seems to be taking steps in the right direction, and he was handed a dumpster fire.
He was handed, yes, correct. I will give you that. That being said,
so he didn't torpedo the program.
No, he did.
Okay.
You cannot cannot say that Florida State was losing by 32 points to a Louisville team that was 1-4. You cannot say that Florida State losing by 24 points to a Pitt team in our house. That wasn't in Pitt. That wasn't in Heinz Field, home of the Logan Robinson Steelers. That was inside Doug Campbell Stadium at Bobby Bowden Field last season, last November 7th. Those two games, to me, it's not the losing factor, it's how we looked. We looked worse in those two games. We looked worse at points this season against teams that we shouldn't be looking worse against than we ever did in 2019 under Willie Taggart. That being said, I'm willing to do what Mike Norvell says and look forward. I'm willing to look forward to the 2021 season. I just want to see what happens at Notre Dame game. If we play well against Notre Dame, I'm willing to give us a chance against Jacksonville State, and then a chance against Wake Forest, and then a chance against Louisville. I'm willing to give this program a chance because this is my alma mater, and I'm willing to give him some love. And if we finish 6-6 and he's 9-12 after 21 games, I'm willing to give him a third season.
So just to clarify, before I let everybody else cut loose,
go ahead.
Me, to torpedo a program is to take it over like Derek Dooley from Philip Fulmer and take a top 10 or 15 program and make it a top 60 program. It's to take over Jim Moore's 10-win UCLA teams and to do a Chip Kelly and go 3-9. That is a torpedo shot on a program.
Correct.
He took a bad program and he failed through one season to improve it.
Correct.
And maybe it got a little bit worse.
That was That was our worst record since when, Mark? 1975. Was it all Mike Norvell? No, absolutely not. I am not placing the entire blame for last season on Mike Norvell. But that being said, I have been on this program multiple times, about 102 of these times. And I have heard you, I have heard Logan, I've even heard James talk about the fact that you have to accept the heat if you're going to be the head coach. He was the head coach of the worst Florida State team, record-wise, since 1975. That's a fact you cannot hide. It wasn't Willie Taggart. It wasn't Jimbo Fisher. It was Mike Norvell. Now the question has to be, taking what Mike Norvell said to me exclusively, only on 6 this past weekend, the question has to be looking forward. How does this team look past what took place last year and look forward into hopefully a much better 2021 season?
Did you have the opportunity to ask him the question that I offered up, which was basically, what was the state of the program when you first took over in regards to looking at the roster, facilities, personnel, the vibe, the environment, the culture?
He played the political card with that answer, and you could tell that he doesn't want to completely throw Willie Taggart under the bus. He doesn't want to throw Jimbo Fisher under the bus. He was very political in saying that he knew that there was going to have to be improvements made. And then from there, he went into the question about 2021 and where he talked about improving from there. But he acknowledged the fact that it was going to be a real rebuilding process. I don't think he knew how much it was going to be. And I'll be the first person to say it, that I think Jimbo Fisher led this on the downhill slalom. I think Willie Taggart made it worse. And I think Mike Norvell made it worse from there. Now the question is going to be, there is nowhere to go but up. A 6-win season is a vast improvement after going 3-6. So that's going to be the question. Can Mike Norvell, with all the people doubting him, and I think there's growing doubt amongst those who aren't wearing garnet and gold after seeing what took place. That being said, I think a lot of people are being like Logan and saying, oh, it was a pandemic year. Oh, he didn't have spring football. Oh, and whatnot. So yes, if he goes 7-5 in the season, it's a drastic improvement, and I'm willing to give him that credit. And if he can go 7-5 this season, I'm willing to say keep him around for a third year. If he has another losing season, if Florida State goes 5-7 or worse this season, they may not be able to afford it. But I think you seriously have to ask the question: does Mike Norvell have to go?
Stop it.
Well, I'd have to put myself in the doubting category, not doubting Mike Norvell. I'm not a supporter nor a doubter at this point. He hasn't proven anything to me, nor am I overplaying the 3-6, even though it looked awful. It was a first season and it was only 9 games. But I'm in the category of, I'm looking at the schedule and I'm looking at the performance last year and considering that it should improve somewhat, but I don't see a drastically better roster this year. So I'm trying to compare that against the schedule and thinking this looks like automatically 5 losses and most likely losing another game or 2 other than the 5.
Which that put us at 5-7. For the record, I'm going to be the biased Florida State grad here. I'm going to say I think Florida State has a 7-5 record. That being said, if you're asking where those 7 wins are going to come from, I may have to stretch on 1 or 2. That's the reality of where we are right now. Yes, James. Shout out to James Coleman, who brought his kid to one of the camps.
You can see him.
Shout out to him.
And he had a speech.
Right.
He gave a speech. James Coleman had to one-up me. James Coleman had took what I did and one-upped it.
I think Mike did this one. This was strategic, and I want every fan to hear this. And I want anybody who writes and critiques of Florida State to truly embrace what I'm saying. Mike doesn't like suck-ups. He doesn't like things being sugar-coated. He doesn't like donos. Mike understands what the standard is and what the expectations are, and he wants to be held to those things. I said it last year after I interviewed him. People called me crazy. He came on my show about a month ago. We had the exact same conversation. Every time I have seen Mike Norvell Norvell has told me that 3-6 is unacceptable, that his team is trying and they're up to the task to be able to go out and do it. I think a lot of the reason why guys like me and Jason, you give fodder when you don't spread the truth, when you can't make a realistic assessment of what it is. 3-6 by no stretch of the imagination is improvement in anything. We did have a better run game. It came from having a better running quarterback. It did not come from the running game. Our passing game went down exponentially. There have been times when we've talked about route concepts and people being in the exact same place. These aren't things that are being made up. These are things that we're seeing on film. Ironically, this young man coming from Notre Dame, talking to a guy, Ian Book, who was the quarterback from Notre Dame, asked him what the differences you saw the first time he played Florida State, which was when he played with against Willie Taggart, and then the second time he played against Florida State. And you know what this kid said? Nothing. That's why you fire a coach to hire somebody regardless. So that's just the reality. So going back to Mike, it's not a personal shot at Mike. The reason why people take personally is one reason and one reason alone. The standard in college football outside of another school, which did it immediately after we did it, is to fire a coach 1.5 seasons in. We know as a fan base that was wrong, right? Regardless of if Tag's supposed to be the coach or not. I'm with Tag was not the standard, but the industry standard doesn't show that you can turn anything around in 1.5 seasons, because that's what it was. And you fire that guy, and now anytime you see it change, you see it looks bad, but you have to defend the position because the way that we argue sports is idiotic, and like we argue politics. At the end of the day, the politics stuff is idiotic too, because at the end of the day, we want a better America. At the end of the day, you want a better Florida State University product. So if you want a better Florida State University product, you can't look on the field and say that product was better. You just feel like you have to defend the things that you were saying about the last administration by going over the top and defending the current one. You feel that proves love, but I'm telling you, as a guy who fans bash because I tell the truth, what other member of the media have you seen go in front of a Florida football game? We can pick up the phone and call the coach directly. Now you want to say it's because I'm a player? If anything, I should be less likely to do that because I'm a former player. But again, understands the standard. Now let's go back to some of the things that Mark talked about. Yes, he did get a roster that was inherently not as good, but there are always challenges that you got. Willie Taggart inherited the 60th ranked recruiting class from a staff that decided that they didn't want to recruit, but he brought that away to number 12, if I remember correctly. Now some of these didn't pan out, but you get paid to do both. Now Mike has done something that has been lauded by our president. He's flipped the roster. Flipped the roster, at least when I played and through my years, means the roster has gotten better. Now, if the roster hasn't gotten better, then what he hasn't done is flip roster. He's purged it and brought other people in, and that's what needs to be the narrative. But there's this sense of pettiness in the Florida State media world where we have to everything that Mike does, we have to look down to Boca, where a man's living his best life on a beach right now, getting paid by our money. Like, if Mike flipped the roster, then we should be more confident. But you know how you can tell if somebody's confident? By how they back their words. And very few people have it, like Jason is stating, winning over 7 or 8 games, regardless of the roster. Because if you flip the roster to a Florida State standard, then you should not fear North Carolina State. You should not fear a Boston College. You should not fear a Wake Forest. Yes, Clemson on a whole nother level right now. Notre Dame, too. Florida and Miami, give a push. Florida, they got their own problem too. And North Carolina possibly the one overall pick. But that's 5 games that you should have, that you should feel that Florida State should lose. The other one should not be any quarterback. If you truly feel the way that you feel, but you don't, because of what you've seen. You've seen play calling that's questionable, what we saw with Taggart. You've seen guys kind of not knowing what they're doing. You've seen penalties, which are supposed to be marks of a more disciplined team. You've seen not enough on the field. You've seen these things, and you know these things, and you choose to ignore these things. That being said, Mike Norvell is a phenomenal motivator, phenomenal person, and a great youth camp, and I do believe that you can't fire him in 1.5 seasons too, because you're doing the same stupid mistake that you made before. You can't keep solving them. You can't. The problem's never going to go away if you keep solving it the exact same way. You've got to give Norvell time. And what we need to do is, instead of trying to wait for wins, we need to add a blue blood in which we have forced our way into doing. Michigan's donations don't go up or down based on wins and losses. Michigan's donations, they're a leather helmet program. They're going to stay constant. Ohio, LSU sucked up until, or were average at best, until my sophomore year in college. They literally came out, but they're helmet program. They stuck to the plan. They have admin that's about winning, and boosters who are about winning, so much so that they're willing to steal from children's hospitals. Like, I'm not saying we need just like that, but I am saying TMA has a huge endowment. Like, we can take a little bit of money from Tallahassee Memorial. My point is you can critique somebody, you can tell the truth about somebody, and you can still support that person. So be a booster, go to games, support them, but don't lie. Don't lie about the situation, because at the end of the day, people see that man. But he's doing a good job of at least selling the plan, and the coaches seem happy. So we'll see. I hope they continue to recruit as well as they've been recruiting, and they're really showing guys that they have a place to play. But if you can't show development in the quarterback room and we're not moving the ball forward, then that's a flaw, because as hard as I was on Kendall Browse produced a 1,000-yard receiver. He produced, I believe, almost. Did Cam Akers get over 1,000 yards last season? We all know Cam Akers is pretty good, not better than what we have. But I'm saying Kendall Browse's offense seemed to have flown a lot better than what we saw Mike Norvell, who's also considered an offensive glue and offensive genius, flow.